So good morning, everybody. Before I go over the guidelines and ask everybody to introduce themselves, Louise is going to read the land acknowledgement statement.
Slightly different from maybe from last week, but I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Tonkawa, Lipan, and Apache, and the Comanche in Austin, the Chitimacha in New Orleans, and the Creeks and the Cherokees in the Atlanta area. I want to thank them for being stewards of these lands through the generations, and that we can continue this stewardship in the future.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. As we all know, the guidelines are that if you want to get on the list, you raise one finger. And if you think you're not being seen, move it around slowly. Make sure it's in the camera. If the person speaking says something that you do not understand, not that you disagree with, but that you don't understand, you may ask a clarifying question by holding up two fingers and move them around slowly. And a clarifying question should be, I didn't understand, or I didn't hear what word you said, or what did you mean by such and such a term? If your impulse is to make a counterpoint to what they're saying, you should raise one finger and get on the list. We ask that everybody, when you're not speaking, keeps themselves muted. So to avoid any like disruptions or background noise affecting the speaker. I should say, involving the clarifying questions, there are only two clarifying questions allowed by two different people per speaker. So whoever's seen first will be called on. And it's not to be a back and forth. Once you ask your clarifying question and the person answers it, you're done. I didn't say the slogan. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in the summer of 1993 to show that we are committed to treating people of all colors with love and respect. And thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Phyllis. I'm going to be the facilitator of today's discussion, which is sort of a part two of last week's about transformative justice. And I'll get into that in a bit. So I'm going to call on people to introduce themselves. Nancy? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Moore. I am in New Orleans, and I have been coming to Erace since June of 2007.
Thank you. Welcome. Ginny?
Jenny Fredericks in Austin, Texas, and I've been coming 6-8 months. I never know. Not long.
Thank you. Beatrice?
Hello, I'm Beatrice Sublé. Believe it or not, I'm in East Point, Georgia, nowhere near New Orleans. Been coming to Erace since 1993 and founder of Erace Atlanta. Glad to see everybody. They say les bons temps roulés.
Larry?
Larry Story, and I go way back with Erace, back into the 90s. Been absent, been away, been offline, but I'm happy to be back on this morning.
Welcome back. Bill?
Thank you.
I'm Bill Ives, and I've been coming to Erace for about 5 years. And I learn something new every time we have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky?
Good morning. I am in Boston, Massachusetts, but I used to be a New Orleans snowbird before the pandemic. And so that's how I got to know Cindy and Bill and Erace. So it's a couple of years now that I've been attending. So good morning to everybody.
Good morning. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise. I'm in Austin now, been coming to Erace for a couple of decades. Used to live in New Orleans, obviously, and now I'm in Austin after Katrina. Love these meetings.
Thank you. Cindy.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Morse, uptown New Orleans. I live right near the river, so I can always watch those ships going by. I've been coming to Erace for about 5 years, I think. I should track it down sometime and really know, but I don't for sure. I remember hearing about Erace way back in the beginning, but I never had time on Saturday because I was always working. So it's nice to be part of the group now. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Francie.
Hi, I don't see myself, so I don't know. Anyway, I'm Francie Manning, and I've been attending off and on for about a year. And I'm in Austin.
Great. Good to have you. Jean.
Always takes me a while to unlock. I'm Jean Walker from Silver Spring, Maryland. And Beatrice invited me to join the group in New Orleans. I belong to the group in Atlanta as well. And I always appreciate everybody's dialogue. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Marva.
My name is Martha. I've been attending Erace post-Katrina, and I think this is the best history and geography lesson I could ever learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here away from the crowd with all of you. I have been coming since right after Katrina is when I was introduced. And in the last year or so, I found you again. Great subject today. I'm really interested in everyone's comments on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Michelle, and I'm in Austin, and I've been coming to Erace since, I guess, around August of 2020. So, I'm looking forward to this conversation too. I really enjoyed the article.
Thanks. Glenn.
I'm Glenn Abdullah. I've been coming to Erace for 28 years. And those entire 28 years, I've been abused by the other members.
Not me, Glenn.
All right, you the exception.
Marla.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marla Burke. I am happy to be back after a few weeks away, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. I've been coming to meetings for about a year.
Thank you. Leonetta.
Good morning, everybody. I've been a member of Erace and a former board member. I've been a member since I was an intern for this organization, working on my undergrad. And I also want to share with everybody, my father's back in the hospital. He has pneumonia.
Oh dear. Sorry to hear that. Greer.
My name is Greer. I've been attending Erace since 2007. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And Marion texted me she won't be able to join today because she's not feeling well. So as I said earlier, this is sort of part 2 of last week's conversation, and I suspect there's going to be other parts as we go along. Last week's conversation didn't feel like we had enough time, and I found this article, which is an interview with some people, and one of them, Miriam Kaba, is talked about in the article that Michelle shared last week, or one of the articles. And I thought this was interesting and an extension of the conversation, in that it talks about some sort of practical on the ground ways to approach accountability without feeling like we have to punish people to achieve justice, that there's other ways, and that I think I would like to see this conversation involve people's imaginations and hopes and wishes and dreams for a more just society, and not be so attached to kind of what we've always known and how we've always experienced things. And I see you, Glenn, but I have not opened the list yet. Now he's abused. Oh dear. So that's my hope for the conversation. I definitely want to do more study of this myself. And I think I didn't say that when you get on the list to speak, you will have 2 minutes. And when we do the wrap up, which, how many people do we have? 18 people. I will try to call the end of the list early enough so that anybody who hasn't spoken will get 2 minutes in their wrap up if they want it, and everyone else will get 1 minute, and we will try our best to finish on time. And also, happy Mardi Gras. That's happening, as you saw by Louise. Where'd Louise go? I mean, not Louise, Beatrice. There you are. You snuck down to the bottom. So I have Glenn on the list. Is there anybody else who wants to get on the list before Glenn speaks? Is that you, Leonetta? You raising your hand? You kind of froze. I'm gonna put
Yes.
Oh, okay. Leonetta and Cindy and Nancy and Bill. Okay, hold on. Cindy, Nancy, Bill, Larry, Michelle.
Got my hand up.
Yeah, I see it. I'm trying to write and look at the same time. So Glenn, Leonetta, Cindy, Nancy, Bill, Larry, Michelle, Becky. Let me put Greer, Becky, Cheryl, and Beatrice. Okay, and then I'm going to close the list. Just kidding. Did I miss anybody? Okay, Glenn, take it away.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, so far.
Okay. I think that's very irrational to, if a person commits a wrong, that there's no penalty.
Sorry, there's no what?
If a person commit a wrong, that there's no penalty for it. You commit a crime, there's no penalty for it. And we don't really want that. Y'all, y'all liberals may say that kind of crap, but y'all don't really believe it. Now, how many of you would want to see those people that attack the Capitol to be, there be no penalty for it? None of you. But you want a guy who commits a crime, you want him, you want him out of jail. If the society would follow your logic, it would cause nothing but problems. All right. You take, like I told you last week, when I was 13 years old, I did shoplifting. I was caught, and if I did it again, there was going to be a penalty. So I stopped doing it. Now just think about, it's millions and millions of people who didn't have no fear of consequences with shoplifting. What kind of problem would that cause? You have to have some kind of punishment if in society, if somebody do a wrong. That's it.
I want to remind everybody that we don't really encourage telling the rest of the group what their opinions are, that you're welcome to express your own, but the rest of us, as was proven last week, have a variety of experiences and opinions. And I also want to say that there is a difference between punishment and accountability with consequences and the mindset behind that. So let's go forward then with Lynetta.
Last week, I got off the phone before I was able to tell you about this family that I'm dealing with. Phyllis, please let me, when I'm finished, when I keep an eye on the time, and when I finish, just put me on the back of the list because I know I won't finish the story.
Okay.
And if I cry or get upset, I apologize with this story. This is a family. It was 3 daughters and 2 sons. They were taken away from their parents. Both parents went to jail for drugs. The 3 daughters, they was trading them for sex. And so there's a lot of sexual trauma with the girls. The oldest girl, when she became 18, the state gave her custody of her siblings. They put them up in the apartment. They gave them food stamps and they were on, that was it. They had no social security cards, no IDs, no nothing. The social worker that they had retired and they became my clients, the whole family. The little boy, I found out he was deaf because of the way he was acting. I had to get hearing aids. Child never went to school. He's 5 and he's just getting in school. He's a black boy, deaf. So you know what type of, you could just imagine the future he has for him. His older sister, the one who became the mother at 18 of 4 people, she never got a chance to go to college. She always wanted to go to college. She had to she had 2 sisters at the time. The one next to her in age that was 16, she eventually, once she became 18, she got out of the house. First of all, let me say that I have 2 hours a week for each one of these clients. That was all I had, and drive time was involved with that. So to tell you about how little time I had to deal with them and a multitude of problems. The 16-year-old sister, when she got out of high school, she left the house. That's my time to end?
That's the time, and I've got you on the list.
Put me back at the end of the list, and I'm telling y'all all this background to get to this subject that we're talking about.
Okay, you're on the list again.
Okay.
Next is Cindy.
One thing that struck me as new information was the idea that accountability is not a one-time event, that it's an ongoing process. Makes a great deal of sense. The use of the word authority, no, that's the wrong word. I found the article somewhat confusing at first, but have gone back over it. Accountability as a one-time event, I think is what most of us think about. You know, something happens, you make yourself accountable for it, but that's not how it works. It's very clear from what Kaba says on the 3rd page, an ongoing minute by minute choice, which puts it in the context of tuning into our world and evaluating ourselves. What are we doing? Is it appropriate? Does it fit the situation? Is it honorable? Makes a difference in how I see the idea of accountability. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Nancy.
Yes. I kind of want to just expound more on what Glenn said, which was my original idea of that criminal justice system being based on negative reinforcement. And I think that in previous, in the past, historically, negative reinforcement worked, okay, to a degree, but it doesn't take into account say people who have mental health issues or behavioral issues where negative enforcement has absolutely no effect whatsoever on them. And I think that if the criminal, and times have changed, because a lot of young people now see going to jail as a rite of passage. I mean, I don't think that, myself personally, that's correct, but for some reason in their world, they do see it as, you know, you're going to go to jail. I mean, that's just all there is to it, you know, and if you don't, you know, that's almost like a stigma in and of itself. You don't have any street cred, you know. So to survive in their world, okay. So I think I'll get back on the list if I run out of time, but I saw an article, a news segment about, and in other countries, I don't know which one it is, Germany or Denmark, one of those progressive European countries, whatever. When people commit a crime, they get rehabilitation. They don't get jail time. And then also, I noticed on WWL, they're talking to the juveniles that are committing the carjackings. Why? Why are you doing this? We don't spend enough time, to me, in this country about asking people why they act or behave the way that they do. Why? Why are you doing this? What happened to you that caused you to do what you did? And work on their rehabilitation, their accountability from that perspective. Why? What happened? I think we go a lot farther, do a lot better if we try to understand why people do what they do. Not that to say any of it is good reason, but I think you go a lot more into solving the problem if you've listened to people. Yes, Glenn, I see you have a clarifying question.
That was perfect time, Nancy. Glenn can ask his question.
Nancy, if you're a woman who get carjacked and the carjacker don't want you, allow you a chance to get your baby out the car seat in the back and drag you down the street, would you be in court asking them to ask them
That
why
is not
you
a
done it?
clarifying question. A
Thank you.
clarifying question is, I don't understand what you meant by. That is a
Oh.
clarifying question.
Oh, okay, so you don't want to answer.
I'm not going to answer it because it's not a clarifying question.
Okay,
not.
point of order, we got that. Thank you, Nancy. I got you back on the list after Leonetta. And
So hold up. You got to put me on the list because she didn't answer my question.
so you want to make a statement about what a woman would do if they were trying to carjack her with her baby in the car?
Yes.
Okay. And Jean, I saw your finger. Sorry about that. Anybody else? Okay, next is Bill.
So I think Glenn raises important consideration. It's a complex issue. First of all, I support transformative justice, but it's difficult. As I mentioned last week, I was held up at knife point by 2 young kids, and I would rather they get rehabilitation than jail time for that transgression against me. On the other hand, we were pleased, most people were pleased that the killer of George Floyd got a number of years in jail. And we were also pleased that the killers of Emma and Audrey got life in prison. And as a deterrent, we felt that might be a deterrent to other killings of innocent Black men. So it's a complex issue. And I got the concept from reading the article, And it sounds like Truth and Reconciliation, the practice of in South Africa. Problem with this country is that Republicans want to make the truth illegal, but that's an aside. But how do we implement this? In what situation is it appropriate? And that's my question to the group, because I fully support the concept, but I support it, I have to admit, situationally. The two kids who held me up, I don't want them to go to jail. I want to get rehabilitated. But the people who killed and Audrey, I do want them to go to jail. So it's situational. I'm just being honest about it. So how do we implement this in a fair and just way? That's my question to the group. I don't have the answer, but I would love to hear answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I want to jump in and say that both articles mentioned that when these conversations happen, we always, the conversations always go to the most violent, scary crimes that happen. So what if you think about, what if you did something to harm someone else? What if you accidentally backed your car out and ran over somebody's pet or something like that? Or as you were turning into your driveway, something failed on your car and you hit your neighbor's house. Let's think about harm that doesn't involve crime and that is more personal to how you would want to be dealt with if you caused some serious harm to somebody. Next on the list is Larry. You have to unmute, Larry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Nancy made a couple of good points. And I'm going to kind of preempt Glenn's concerns and say, yes, Glenn, if somebody hijacked my car and dragged me down the road, in the final analysis, yes, I would want to know what caused them to do that. What made them be so inconsiderate that they would do something like that? You know, and then when Nancy said that a lot of people see jail as a rite of passage, you know, way back in 1965 or so, when I was a juvenile, I got locked up. And when I got out and I went back on the corner where I was hanging out at, one of the older men, when I told him what was happening to me, I was very grieved and sorry and regretful for what I did. But in his way of comforting me, he said, "That's all right, Larry, make you a man, that'll make you a man." So in all of these years then, nothing has changed. And I was in a meeting with former Sheriff Marlon Gusman some years ago, and the conversation of recidivism came up. And I asked the sheriff, I said, when these young people come back into the system, do you all have a way of sitting down, talking with them, interviewing them, find out what caused them to come back to the system? And he said no. He said no. And I think, yes, overall, the time for the abolition of the criminal justice system is not here until we learn how to deal with evil. And is that my signal?
Is, do you want to get back on the list?
Yes, please.
Okay. So next is Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, the article certainly, I'm like you, Phyllis, I was thinking of in terms of, you know, I guess, bottom up, top down type of thinking as far as this change of way of doing things. I mean, I highlighted a lot of stuff, excuse my cat who wants to join. highlighted a lot of things that came up for me. And I found myself thinking about this term of accountability in terms of everyday living. And I think Cindy kind of alluded to that too, like different ways of thinking about accountability and how it works within our society overall. And it, you know, having a member of my family going through a treatment system right now that has to do with mental health, it certainly played into my thinking around that kind of stuff and being accountable to yourself about the harm you do to yourself, in addition to the harm you do to other people in society. And so, I mean, I think a model of rehabilitation exists right there, in terms of how we treat people who are trying to get over mental addictions that might happen to them and they're harming themselves. The same thing would apply to, you know, incarceration. You know, we would still need to get people out of society and for them to be safe for themselves and also to not harm other people. But in the meantime, while they're there, giving them a way of redeeming themselves and making them become accountable for the actions that they've taken to both harm themselves, because ultimately that's what they've done, right? They have harmed themselves by doing the actions that they've done out in society to other people. They've, you know, in the stage that we're in right now with the mass incarceration, they've almost irrevocably harmed themselves. So we need to find a way to turn that around for them so that they have a way of getting back out and having a reason for wanting to be, get back out in society and rehabilitating themselves. And so I look at it in terms of that. And you can put me back on the list.
Okay. Next is Greer.
Okay, I'm on now.
Yep.
Okay, my thing is, America always wants to repair a problem from the wrong end. When we have the information about what's causing a lot of the ills that's going on right now. And then with the legal system, you have disparity in sentencing. So there's not even fairness in that. So when you do go to jail without the ability to have repentance, to get help, because most women who are in jail for drugs, some type of drug related. 80% of the women who are in jail for violent crimes. But we know why they're there. That's because we live in a capitalistic society that puts a price tag on a body filling a cell. And that's a big problem. I understand accountability. I understand we're going to have people who are deviants. That's just a part of anything. That are deviants that are going to need to be locked up. Let's not forget about that. But why do we continue to want to repair a problem from the wrong side? You know why? Because it costs too much to repair the source. The Current Commission report gave us everything we needed to know about what's going on here now today. And that was done in the 60s. And the stuff from that report is still affecting us today. That's basically why nothing changes, because nobody wants to spend the money to correct the problem.
Bill, I got you.
That's it.
Thank you, Greer. Next is Becky.
Well, I want first to talk about less violent crimes just briefly. In Denmark, the system is that you do go to jail when you commit a nonviolent crime, but you continue in your job so that it doesn't interrupt the family life. You've done the wrong thing and you go to jail for 2 or 3 years, and you do receive rehabilitation, but you keep your job and you keep supporting your family. And I don't know if that would ever work here for a variety of reasons, but it's a different way of thinking of how you sentence somebody. But for more violent crimes, I think rather than sending people to jail, they have some sort of a hospital situation so that people can, if they have drugs, they can get rehabilitation. And so I think it's somehow that even in a violent crime, to leave the route to rehabilitation open is a good idea. I agree with Glenn. You've got to imprison somebody if they commit a violent crime and do something. But I know one of my churches spends time volunteering for people in prison. And I just will never forget the description of a volunteer helping a man who seriously regretted the murder that he had committed and wondered how on earth he could ever be forgiven for that and forgive himself. So there is that kind of person too. And it would be nice to be involved in his rehabilitation. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you, Becky. Next is Cheryl.
I'm going to be rude and interrupt, but Larry had a clarifying question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Back. And yeah, I think you just missed him.
Well, yes, actually it was for Greer.
Okay.
I raised the two fingers while Greer was speaking, but my clarifying question when she said 80% of people who are in jails or prisons are there for drugs, because of drugs, but my clarifying question is it directly drug related or 80% of the people who committed crimes had drugs in their system?
No, I was talking about women. 80% of the women are in jail for nonviolent crime, and they're related to drugs, and mainly it's drug use. And if they're selling drugs, it's because they're addicted to drugs.
Okay, thank you.
Larry, did you also want to be on the list again?
Yes, I said
Okay.
that at the end of
Yeah,
my last
you're on. I just want to make sure I didn't make a mistake. Okay.
Mhm.
So Cheryl, go ahead then.
I don't have any answers. In 2008, I took a class in Restorative Justice, which is for nonviolent crimes, and it has worked here in the city in many of the high schools. There's actually an active program, and victim and whoever commits the offense to you, you meet and you set up a plan, and it's really worked with people, underage people, really well. My family has manslaughter in it. My step-grandfather murdered his father and went to prison for several years. And I believe because someone came out and made a statement, somehow because there were no witnesses and it was hard to prove the crime, he was out again and he joined our family. So I'm a little tainted when it comes to things like this myself. I do believe that people are rehabilitatable. I don't know if that's the right word. It's really hard to understand the difference between accountability and punishment with the system. The system we have does make money off of people and doesn't train people to go back into the world and doesn't keep people out of it. So it's a revolving door. I'm just repeating things everyone already knows. I started studying things like this through OPRC, which is a group working here in New Orleans that's really trying to work with the justice system here to create ways before people get to the bad places and help with that. Also, I'm part of a group from People's Institute European Descent, and we started studying different things on this subject, and I find it still, my brain is like expands. I got to do a Zoom because I thought we were going to read this book with Marianne Kaba, and so I got to do a Zoom with her, and she's phenomenal. If you guys find her, I'm going to end real quick, hoping I can get this in, quoting her in her book, "We do this till we free us. Changing everything might sound daunting, but it also means there are many places to start, infinite opportunities to collaborate, and endless imaginative interventions and experiments to create. Let us begin our abolitionist journey not with the question, what do we have now and how do we make it better? Instead, let's ask, What can we imagine for ourselves and our world? If we do that, then the boundless possibilities of a more just world awaits us. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Greer, I've got you on the list. Beatrice is next.
I wanted to first amen a lot of what Greer is saying about the actually unfettered capitalism as a motivating factor for a lot of ways that we solve social problems, which is very unfortunate. And also amening her referencing once again the Kerner Commission report, absolutely buried with very good information, absolutely buried and nothing was done. I know it's counterintuitive to think about not punishing people for trying to get revenge. That was mentioned in the article, that we need to take a look at social determinants of behavior and what is it? I used to be a truant officer in DC years ago, and I would watch a student who was not performing that well in school, who would begin to get disengaged, disinterested, thrown away kind of as a sense. And then gradually all that leads to being on the street away from school, committing minor crimes and so on. We have to start looking at conditions that produce people, not evil people. That was another good point. I used to make that with my students. People can do bad things, but people are not bad. And we have to start with that understanding. Bishop Tutu wrote a book with his daughter called Made for Goodness. And that is true. That is what we are made for, but the circumstances in which we find ourselves for whatever reasons create something that we were not created to be. And we have to take a look at that. I know, like I'm saying, a lot of this is counterintuitive. It's just easy to say, let's lock them up. But our prisons are not producing, they're not rehabilitating people. We're not understanding that these people, many of them will return to society. What are you doing to this person? Is this person, as we spoke about last week, disposable? Do they lose when they get out? Can they get a job? Can they get benefits? No. Can they vote again? We are throwing people away, and it's because there's money in it. And we're not really looking at what is it that makes this person who he or she has become. Crime is an end result. We need to be starting again. I'm going to Greer. At the beginning, why is this person doing this? Let's create a circumstance where it doesn't happen that a person has to get on drugs. How is somebody so disinfected with life that they will use something that's going to kill them and then have to rob somebody to get the money to do it? Well, human problems are complex. That's the main thing. And we can't solve any of them by one solution. And the solution cannot be punishment, throwing them away, stuff. They're evil, they're gone, especially when so many of our people, and I probably have to get on. I had a real different idea.
Yeah, that was your time. Do you want to get back on the list?
Yes, I didn't even hear it. Yes, please.
That's okay. So Beatrice, you're going to have to be the last person because we just really have a full list still. I'm going to read who I have on the list and let me know if anybody put up their finger at any point and I missed you. Leonetta, Nancy, Glenn, Jean, Larry, Michelle, Bill, Greer, and Beatrice. Did I miss anybody? Okay, great. Hi, Pedro. Jean, you're on there. You're on. Okay, Leonetta, you are next. And you're not going to be able to get back on for part 3. So are you there, Leonetta? Oh, there she is.
Yes. Okay, the third daughter in the family, she is very highly sexual. She has 4 kids from 4 different men, and she's bisexual. So I'm gonna leave it like that. Does the brother, I told you about the little brother that's deaf. Then the other son in the house, he is one of those kids that's out here breaking into cars. He's been getting, he has a record. He even told me that he wanted to see what my car looked like so he wouldn't break into my car. He told me, I said, well, he told me don't leave nothing in my cars, and that's why we break into cars, because even if the charges in the car, they break in the car too. And so this is the family. The parents got out of jail a couple of years ago and wanting to be parents to these children. the boys, well, the little boy was an infant when the parents went to jail, but the other boy is one that's breaking in the cars. He has so much anger in him because he could not protect his sisters. So he's a very angry young man. And that's how he's taking his anger out on society. The oldest daughter, she ended up dying of an overdose last year. She just could not deal with the responsibilities and trying to be a young woman with an already made family. The next sister is clinically depressed. She's working, but she's depressed. She's on medication. I say all of this because they're my clients. Like I said before, I have 2 hours a week to spend with them, including drive time. Who's accountable for this family? We have a criminal, a young juvenile criminal. We have the little brother's he has a criminal life ahead of him if nothing is done. I'm doing the best I can. The state bit down. The parents are not, well, the father's dead, mother is a recovering addict that's trying to be a mother to these kids that they resent. So this is just one family in New Orleans. Who's accountable for this? And that's what I wanted to bring to this discussion. And I know they have more families with stories similar to this. So this is what society has created, what society has to deal with, and I just want to bring that to the discussion.
Thank you very much.
Up, Phyllis?
A little bit ago,
okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Right.
But I appreciate your story and your comments as a social worker. Next is Nancy.
I wanted to, there's so much to this that I, want to talk about. Okay, Glenn, you're right that if I would be very angry if someone stole my car, and even angrier if my child or my grandson would have been in the car and stole it, and I definitely would want to see them punished. That is a given. But also there is the larger issue of why do people feel they have to do that? What happened to you? As Leonetta is saying, what happened to you that puts you in this mindset that you feel this is your only way to survive, or your only way out, or this is what society expects from me? Those are larger issues, and something can be done about it. And I'm even going to go so far as to say, I know the methods sound counterintuitive, but I'm also, as you all know, I work with NAMI, and I work with people who have family members with mental health challenges. And one of the things that we talk about to help the relationship, it's all about the relationship. And a lot of things that you'd have to do to live with and work with and support a person with a mental health challenge sounds very counterintuitive, but it works. Doesn't work overnight, but it works. So I think that in this issue, and with this, it's very similar. You're trying to work with behavior, and it takes positive reinforcement as opposed to negative reinforcement. Works so much better, 99% of the time. That's it.
Thank you. You're really good at ending at exactly 2 minutes. Glenn, you are next.
Yeah, blaming the justice system, making the justice system the one that's going to make this person whole again. You start off with the parents. Then you go to the religious community. the ones supposed to really saving the soul of that person, teaching that person morality, right and wrong, what is right and what is wrong. You don't go to the justice system for the justice system to straighten them out, or send your child to school for the teacher to raise that child. No, you're looking in the wrong place if you want the justice system. Justice system is to bring them to justice. Now, if they don't get, if you commit a crime, if you begin to, if that people begin to commit crime and there's no penalty, you know what's going to happen? The family that they did it towards, they're gonna want revenge, and it happens all the time. You do somebody something, when they get out on the street, that person wind up getting shot because the justice system didn't deal with it. And another thing about juveniles, most times juveniles really, they get off the first time when they do something for the first time. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Glenn. Next is Jean. You're still muted, Jean.
I know, thank you.
There you go.
Well, I could come from very many different angles, but I agree with Nancy and the other person, I can't remember, and Beatrice. I think we need to look at accountability of both for ourselves as well as for our fellow man, the other members of our community, and particularly the juveniles. I mean, I think if we can get to them and teach them accountability, which is they have to realize what it is that they have self-reflection, they have to apologize, they repair, and they work for changed behavior. I mean, I know it sounds idealistic, but it just seems if we can stop them before they're in the pipeline to prison, that we will have a better society. Yes, capitalism, poverty, racism, they're all conducive to these problems. I've had a difficult week because my great-grandson's father's been arrested for first-degree murder. He already had been arrested, charged, and pled guilty to child abuse when my great-grandson was a baby. And he's been in prison, I'm not sure why. Then lately, apparently, he had a robbery on the metro station. And from there, he just last week, Wednesday, Thursday, shot a man and he died. So he's 23-year-old Black man. And I'll go back to what Glenn said. I don't know his parents, but I've heard about his mother. She was verbally abusive, if not physically, and did not seem to be welcome in the home. And I think if we could have gotten someone like him, day one with the parents, it would have been a different story for this young man. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I'm sorry to hear that's going on in your family.
We're relieved because he was stalking my granddaughter. So glad that he's off the street, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, that must be a relief.
I think that we're due for lots of good things from the future. But
thank you for sharing that. Larry, you are next.
No, I think many of the problems we're dealing with now in 2022 goes back to America's roots, because here we are in 2022, we're still dealing with racism. And I mean, somewhere, I think in the preamble to the Constitution, it made mention of establishing a more perfect union. And we've not established that more perfect union in 400 years. We're still dealing with some of the same root problems. And I think that a lot of school systems are rejecting now is what we need to deal with. That is the 1619 project, as well as the critical race theory. But there are certain aspects of society who don't want to deal with those problems because we don't want to be made to feel guilty of the past and what our quote unquote forefathers did. But until we deal with the root cause of some crimes, yes, and I don't, there must be punishment. There must be punishment. And we must work towards restorative justice or whatever it is. But for now, you know, even in terms of accountability, before we can have accountability, a child must be taught what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral. And if a child grows up without knowing that, you know, if you've ever been out on the street yourself, wow, I'm sorry.
No, you still have time. That was just one of my
But if you've ever been out on the street yourself or been in an environment where you are talking with criminals, there's a whole new different street language than what we're talking. And we have to learn that street language. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Michelle?
Yeah, a lot of what I was going to talk about has been kind of said here and there by many people, but I think one of the things that needs to be recognized here too, not just parent involvement, certainly that's the key at the very beginning of a child's life, but I think American society and other societies around the world, but chiefly American, as we've probably identified here many times, has a very individualistic take on life here in this country. And that's very isolating because we forget about the people that we surround us on a day-to-day basis. And that's part of accountability, right? Is that we recognize the harms that we do to ourselves and those around us. And when we don't get to know the people around us, the people that literally live right next door to us, for example, then it kind of removes us from the accountability we have to that person because we don't fully see who that person is and understand their humanity in relation to our own. And so I think that's going to be key is because that's a lot of what I took away from this article is like, yeah, I don't know the people that live on my street. And if I want to, you know, if I were in a crisis on my street, for example, we found out somebody was being abused on the street. And I very much like the example that the authors put in there about living in an apartment building and knowing who you might be able to call on to rectify that situation, because that would give you the strength, having a buddy, so to speak, to go to the neighbor who you thought might be abusing somebody and intervene if you had somebody else to go along with you. Well, you know, on my street, I wouldn't have that. And so I very much took away from this that, you know, what needs to be done is we need to build community again. And we've lost the ability to do that. Maybe we never had that. But I think that's a key component to this transformative justice is we need to start building community. We need to be brave. We need to reimagine things. We need to have some imagination for how we can reach out to our fellow man. And I know, you know, with the racism in this country, that's going to be very difficult for a lot of people because they see so many of those people as others. And that's a key component of being able to build community is to have the comfort in your heart and in your mind to know that the people around you are not scary. They're not different. They're just humans like you are. And we all just want to get along, and to get along, the majority of us, and we need other people to be able to do that in this world.
Thank you, Michelle. Bill is next.
I want to share two examples of the use of punishment or the lack thereof. Kamala Harris, despite what her opponents, the misinformation that her opponents did, was working for a lot of things to reduce mass incarceration. And one of the programs she had was would fit the model of transformative justice. A nonviolent first offender had, if they were convicted, they had two choices. They could go to jail or they could go to a rigorous job training program. If they chose the job training program, they didn't have to do any jail time. And not only that, if they successfully completed it, their record was expunged, so they wouldn't have a criminal record, so they could be better able to get a job. And this had a significant reduction in recidivism by the people who participated in the job training program. Another thing that was a little more controversial, she noticed there was a big surge in homicides of young Black men. And she looked into it and she found that 95% of the kids who were killed were high school dropouts. So she wanted to reduce the high school dropouts. So she made it the parents responsible for the truancy. And and there was a threat of jail, but no one ever went to jail. But she, with this program, with using the threat of jail for the parents, greatly reduced the dropout rate in the high school. I think it was reduced by 30%. So those are two examples of the question I posed at the beginning. How do we implement this? And I think nonviolent first offenders are a real target audience for transformative justice before they get involved in the system and have a way to avoid it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Greer? Leonetta, the list is closed. Did you have a clarifying question? Sorry, Greer.
No, I didn't. Thank you. I missed that. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. Greer, go ahead.
I'm gonna say this. We can't want more to be done to a perpetrator than the victim. A lot of people take that on as their personal problem when actually it's the victim's problem and how they deal with it. I noticed that when that officer killed Boatman John, she was embraced by the brother and the father, but the one person who never came out to say any forgiveness was the mother. She carried him for 9 months. She saw a future for her son. In a way she feels she has the right to feel that way. And also something else, again, I say this a lot, they use the test scores to build jails. So you're putting out there a group of kids whose only avenue to support themselves is eventually going to be crime. Again, rather than improve the schools, find out what's going on in the home, getting the necessary help, because that will cost money, they'd rather let it be what it is. I mean, everybody's talking about like critical race theory. And I always say history isn't theory, history is fact. So if we can't even get the schools to teach fact about what actually went on in history, we see why things like this with the kids just being floated through to prisoner pipeline from the school, you see why it's happening. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greer. Next is Beatrice, and then we're going to go into the people who have 2 minutes for their roundup, and then we'll do the 1 minute. So go ahead, Beatrice.
What I was going to say was that I had a different look or a different thought in reading this article when they mentioned Breonna Taylor, of course, for whom there is no justice because she's dead, and George Floyd. Of course, no justice. And I do feel like Bill was saying that the police that were involved, even now, those 3 officers that were standing there while Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck, or have now been charged. I had a sense of, okay, they got what they deserved. They shouldn't have stood by and let him kill somebody, no matter if he was a policeman or he was 20 years. But none of that deters behavior. The police are still with no-knock warrants going and shooting people. So we really need to take a different look at what is it that we're doing when people are accused of crimes. How are we handling them? I support Glenn as you spoke about the institutions that are supposed to help mold us, teach, character, morality, and all that stuff. But we have to strengthen those institutions. Look at the families. Look at what Lynette is saying. The families are struggling in poverty and falling apart. And we're putting people in prison, men in prison who can't support their families. We just have to see that there are circumstances with which we can deal in a different way before we get to deciding whether somebody goes to prison. And I think that is where transformative justice and that kind of thought goes. Our state is one of only 3 states that treat 17-year-olds as adults. So we are now supporting Interfaith Children's Movement, one of the groups that I volunteer with, is supporting a law to make it so that 17-year-olds are not treated as adults and put into the adult system. That's one big change that could be made. There's no, a 17-year-old having an 18-year-old doesn't have the mental capacity to make good choices without recognizing consequences. So certainly a 17-year-old. This is just really hard. And to think about to think about doing something other than revenge, punishment, to have a whole different mindset is going to take work.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. So that's the discussion. We've got, I've got 6 people I wrote down as getting 2 minutes for wrap up. Tell me if I missed anybody. I've got Ginny, Louise, Marva, Marla, Pedro, and Francie. Did I miss anybody who didn't speak at all yet? Okay, so Ginny, you have 2 minutes if you would like.
Some of this may have already been said, I apologize, but the article was, I think, I can't remember who said it, the first read through, they were confused. I'm like, oh my God, it was really dense. But I also feel like it paints people and situations with too broad of a brush. I don't know where you make that demarcation, obviously, but I'm with Bill in terms of the police, who killed innocent Black people versus, the kid on the street who robbed him at gunpoint. And one thing, and I don't know what was meant by this, but they said no cages, no cameras, no cops. And if anyone in their, remarks can tell me what that means. I mean, I know what no cages means, and I didn't know what no cops mean, no police force at all. The other thing I want to address is we've talked a lot about help in the schools, and I want to suggest that we start earlier. My background is infant mental health, and I often worked with families that had a foster child who was under 3 years of age. Child would go visit their parent, come back and act out all over the place, and helping them understand what's underneath that behavior. Obviously, if the child breaks something or kicks and hurts somebody, that, needs to be stopped, but to understand what's underneath that. And often I think underneath anger is grief for a lot of people. And I think when that grief is received by someone and understood, and that person is embraced, loved, whatever the situation calls for, I think often that anger can be transformed. So that's my 2 cents, 2 minutes, whatever.
Thanks, Ginny. Louise, you're next.
Oh my God, even up to the last minute, Ginny, you just added something that I want to also add, so it adds to my list. Yeah, people just want to be heard, right? I mean, that's a huge thing, especially as I work with youth in my elementary school, the ones with, emotional disturbances and problems. Anywho, that's not what I was going to talk about. Yeah, the justice system is obviously extremely broken. I mean, it's a for-profit business, for goodness sakes. So they obviously don't care. They want more and more people in it. So it is extremely broken, and we can't, rely on it. I do, however, think one solution, and people also have touched on it, after school programs. There's so many statistics that say from the end of school to 7 o'clock or whatever is when all the major crimes are happening with the youth. After school programs, and I speak from experience as I ran one in New Orleans, and yes, they're extremely, and they will teach kids, if you've got a good program with good leaders, they do teach all of these morals and responsibility. They give the kids responsibility. They make them feel that they are worth something. You know, I mean, all of these things. I so think this is so crucial. And maybe if they are playing up in high school, instead of giving them a, whatever lines to do, whatever, send them to an after school program that has to be part of their, what they have to do, and see what it will change them. And I think that is huge. To hopefully break the cycle, as we know. Oh my God, what else? Oh, and schools, yes, of course, teaching. We so need to change what we're teaching in school. And now they're even, tying our hands even more now with what we can teach. It's ridiculous, but so that's it. That's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Next is Marva.
I value all your input and take from the discussion a lot to think about. Can anyone tell me if there is such an ongoing thing, Parents Teachers Association, which during my school days was held every month? It was useful. They discussed the problems that they had in education and would address the problems with the students, and they would solve the problems with the monthly discussions. Yeah, I don't hear about that, and it's probably taken on another name, and that was beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, Marva. Next is Marla.
Yeah, I've just been listening to everybody. It's all very heavy. I continue to think about the concepts of collective trauma for, people of color, 100%, and also white folks and their families where they've experienced this repeated kind of cycle of violence, and how that ultimately impacts other people in their family and in their, along the genetic line, if you will, to behave in ways that are not understandable or maybe have no real basis or reason, but are simply just because of the trauma that's been held in the body for so long, from generation to generation. And I think epigenetics and all that is a very real thing, that we hold on to trauma in that way. And I don't know how to make people believe that, especially things like post-traumatic slave syndrome and all of those concepts, but I continue to try. And then the second thing that I continue to think about are programs that are here in New Orleans that I've actually looked into, and I think this may be the trigger for me now to jump off and just do it, is mentoring children whose parents are in jail. And apparently, this has a tremendous impact, or has a potentially tremendous impact on these kids who have solid and continuous mentors that they can count on over the years. So thanks for the discussion. It was great.
Thank you, Marla. Louise put in the chat that there's an organization in New Orleans called Loop, L-O-O-P, all caps, that if you want to make a note and Google that to see what that's about. I assume it's school related, Louise? Or no?
No, but it's a spin-off of what I used to do with my partner, the outdoor program. It's Louisiana Outreach, outdoor program.
Okay,
And they have all kinds of things, and it's really good for the youth of New Orleans.
thank you. Pedro.
Hey, as always, it's a great blessing to hear everybody's comments. It stirs so many critical thoughts in my own mind, so I appreciate and thank everybody for that. I think, in the addiction field, they say speed kills, and poverty kills. And we know poverty kills because studies have shown that people are robbed a decade or more of life if they have to fight through life their whole time on the edge of financial ruin. So the discussion is about individual versus social responsibility. Individual always has to be responsible. Dr. King asked the question in his famous speech, Beyond Vietnam, that flipping a coin to a beggar is not enough. What creates beggars? And I've go back to the deal that we are the richest nation in the history of the world. Think about that. And we have the greatest amount of wealth inequality. And it even expands the wealth inequality under presidents like Barack Obama. There is a systemic issue, and individually, it's really important to be responsible. But if we don't look at the irresponsibility of society, then we're never going to get out of this morass. I don't think, we all know parents do not wake up saying, how can I mess up my kids? They try to do what they can, and they try to do the best with what they have. And they've been brought up in a really dysfunctional, oftentimes, environment that can often affect those desires. So I'm very reluctant to pass too much judgment on parents, although of course they're essential for solving the problem. I think that's my 2 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Francie, you are next.
Well, this is definitely a cradle to grave topic. I don't know if 2 sessions is enough for us to explore this completely. I had a friend 20 years ago who was head of the juvenile detention department in Dallas, and that was probably the start of some young people having to cope with society, being detained for things like running away from home, which is completely inappropriate in my opinion. I'm sure in most everyone's opinion here. But setting those kids up for failure later, and it goes all the way to a topic that was mentioned in the article, but which we haven't discussed, which is evil. Are there evil people? And in light of current events, I have to say, I think that there might be some evil people, but I don't know if they're born evil or they become evil from other circumstances. But a huge segment of the world is being affected by one person, and I would like to see that person taken out of society somehow, doing vastly more harm than he's entitled to extract from the rest of us. That just boggles my mind. But this discussion has been very, very interesting, and thank you all for all of your ideas, opinions, and experiences.
Thank you very much, Francie. My phone. I really appreciate everybody's contributions to this conversation. And I agree, Francie, it's probably not going to be the last time this comes up in our conversations. Anybody who's a facilitator is welcome to bring it again, of course. I jotted some notes. I just want to kind of go over.
You never called me.
yeah, I didn't get in the roundup either.
I didn't do the 1 minutes. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. See, I get all distracted. Lord help me. Let me move.
I did the same thing, Phyllis, last week, if you recall, so don't feel bad.
Okay, so I will start with Glenn since he called me out. Glenn, you can have your 1 minute, and then Greer, and then I'll go through again.
Yeah.
By Ginny, she had to go.
You know, I'm not kidding. You know, like I said, like last week I told you, I go to the Jefferson Parish prison system, and I get an opportunity to talk to the young men that are incarcerated. Been doing this for 4 years. Now, if some of y'all would come with some of your ideas, they would laugh at y'all. They would encourage you to help to have this happen, but they'll be laughing. Not blaming them, blaming the system. They would love to hear that from y'all. Now, the system didn't affect us in the 50s when parents were more involved with the children. It didn't affect us. We weren't going to jail. And we always say it takes a village to raise a child.
Did you want to wrap that up?
I can't remember what I was going to say. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Greer?
Basically, when needs are met, you have a decrease in crime. But as long as our existence is monetized, there's no incentive to actually do anything to correct the ills of society. And yes, it does take a village to raise a child, but the key that's missing to that, it takes a healthy village to raise a child, because a village could be criminals, a village could be the mentally slow. It takes a healthy, physical, spiritual village to raise healthy children. And I'm going to say it. Yes, parents have to be responsible for their kids. And if they aren't, then they need to reach out for help. And I know it's not teachers' jobs to spot inadequacies in home life, but it has to be on all levels to get help. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greer. Nancy?
I too agree that parents should be responsible for their children. However, circumstances are such. This situation that we're dealing with today didn't happen overnight. As Glenn said, you know, you didn't have these problems in the 50s, but you had other problems in the 50s. Okay, and it just seems like it's like whack-a-mole. You get rid of one problem and up pops another problem. But when you incarcerate, I mean, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. So where are the men to mentor the young men coming up? They're in jail. And that is a problem. That is a big problem. Okay, and I think it's by design that that happens. So I know I only have a minute, maybe there should be a part 2 to this, but it's just not as simple. There's no simple answer. There's no one answer that will solve everything. It's on a case-by-case basis, and you need to have multiple resources and solutions and answers to these problems that we're having today.
Thank you, Nancy. Next is Larry.
Yes, I go back to one of my original statements that I think one of the solutions lies in teaching right and wrong, good and bad, moral and immoral. Yes, I do believe there's evil in the world. There's evil in the world because there's God in the world. As long as there's God in the world, there are going to be forces opposing to God. And I think the institutions that we currently have the church, the mosque, the synagogues. You know, those institutions are part of the village that it takes, but if those institutions are broken and not functioning as they ought to be, we're going to continue to have a broken society. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Becky.
Well, it's a wonderful discussion. Thank you to everybody. We really need better financial support for our families. That is the gap between expenses and what people have to pay from is impossible. So that's one thing. And I think we could offer, even in the existing prison system, better health care to help the people who are addicted. That should be part of it. So those are doable things, but I do wish we could change our system of incarcerating nonviolent people who've committed nonviolent crimes. I think that's not, it's not helpful. It's too much of a waste of time. So thanks for all the discussion.
Thank
Have a
you.
good.
You as well. Cindy, you're next.
It's been an interesting discussion. It's a complex issue, obviously, and I think we all know that. Anytime a child is in trouble, I think we need, as teachers, neighbors, friends, members of the family, whatever the connection is, we need to consider all the influences on the lives of people in trouble and support discussion about consideration of alternatives to help. Because I worked with little ones, it starts at age whatever, as young as they come. I dealt with 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds. But a lot of times you can see trouble there that comes to fruition in high school or in college or later, or by not making it that far. But to be involved, to pay attention, to listen, it's cumulative over a long time in the lives of our people. We need to take care.
Thank you.
A big job.
Thank you very much. Next is Jean.
Yes, I agree that we should support our families. I think also we should take the police out of the schools, put in more social workers and mental health experts. We should decriminalize drugs and provide better and more sites for people to either continue drugs safely or to get off drugs, and it can work. We should de-privatize prisons, because now people are just making money off that. And I think we should put it back into the public coffers. Maybe things would be a little different. I think the programs that Bill mentioned that Kamala Harris had in California for people being diverted from their criminal justice, they were great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Next is B.
I think that decision makers need to be people that have an understanding of human behavior and that they view situations through a human behavior lens, not just a budgetary lens or criminality lens. When I taught 6th grade in DC, there was a student of mine who came to school. He was so different that day. He wouldn't let anybody touch him. He didn't want to talk to anybody. So at lunchtime, I walked over to his house and I talked to his older brother and found out that their father had been shot that night. So when I came back on the playground, I just looked at him and I told his name was Stanley. I said, "Stanley, I know." And he came to me and I hugged him. Because I found out what hurt that child, what pain he carried. We don't know what pain people are carrying. When did it happen? It's like a backpack that they always are going to have unless we help them. So this has been a great conversation, and thanks everybody for the input. I just think we need to be aware, be present for people, and know when somebody needs an uplift.
Thank you, Beatrice. Lynetta.
Yes, a lot of people have talked about parents being accountable. In the state of Louisiana, I don't know if it's common knowledge, but when some of these foster children get and adopted children get a certain age, the parents return these children back to the state. And there's nobody accountable for what these kids are doing because they're in group homes. So there's no parent to be accountable. I just wanted to share that information with y'all. And in a situation like this family I have, a sister is considered the guardian. She's not a parent. So like Beatrice said, children, these children that are committing crime come with baggage, not to excuse what they do, but it is a reason for what they do. And also here in the city of New Orleans, I know everybody's aware, if you look at the age of the juveniles that are breaking into the cars and doing the carjacking and come back 15 and 16 years. Is my time up, Phyllis?
Yeah, it's up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next is Cheryl.
It's been a great discussion. I'm still learning so much more about that. It seems to me that we would have a lot in society to change before we could really get into transformative justice to really make it work. I think it's interesting that I note that here this Black History Month, here the last weekend, we have something that's changed for Black history in the United States is we now have a new Superior Court judge, which is interesting as we're on this subject. So happy end of the month, everybody. Have a good week.
Thank you, Cheryl. Bill?
Yeah, great article and discussion. Appreciate everybody's comments. I think we need to look at the major underlying cause of crime, and that's the greed of the rich. I agree with Pedro, who said there's no reason why we have poverty in our country. We're the richest country in the history of the world, and yet the greed of the rich has unfair tax issues and vetoes all the programs that would address this. And then once people get in prison, and some people are going to always commit crimes, I know that, but many of the people who, these are crimes of desperation. And once they go to prison, the greed of the rich scuttles the rehabilitation because they want for-profit prisons. So until we tackle the greed of the rich and a fair distribution of income and resources, we're not going to solve this problem.
Thank you, Bill. Michelle?
Yeah, I have to agree the sentiment on a lot of people here. Well, this is a topic that could go on and on and on. I'll just say that one of the other things that struck me in the article, I'll just read it, that I guess she's Rice, one of the authors of the article, one of the interviews in the article, I think about how much harm people inflict before they have any language for it. Young people are just starting to navigate their emotional range. And so, you know, I think there's a lot to that just young people just don't have the mental capacity to, you know, navigate the system yet and understand and how to navigate their own accountability and all of this. So, which, you know, of course, parenting is another issue we've been talking about the whole time. And I will say that the help as a parent, I've completely changed my, you know, thought process on parenting the whole time I've been a parent so far. And my thinking on it has evolved definitely. But I will say that a lot of the things that I gained out of being a parent, I gained through the community that was involved around me. So I think back to when my children were very young and I was in a preschool that actually provided some parenting classes to me. Those are the things that were invaluable. They gave me insights that I never got. So I think parenting is one of those things we shift off and we don't really provide anything for. So I look back and think if I'd had parenting classes good parenting classes, that is, when I was a teenager, for example, and got some sort of foundation for learning what it was like to be a parent, might have been helpful, and I think would be a helpful thing for all of society, because it is the one thing we're not prepared for, but it's the one thing that gives us, we have so much accountability as parents, raising other people. So just a thought, but that's all. But we definitely should come back to this topic. It was a good one.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, now I'll say what I was going to say before I lost my mind. I wonder, first of all, Nancy's statement about young men saying it's a rite of passage to go to jail. I wonder if it's also like they don't see that they have any other option. They think that's just what their future will hold, because that's what the society has looked like and what has told them in the school to prison pipeline situation, where they're treated that way at school as if they're already prisoners in a carceral situation. I think this no family, no parent, no institution in our country exists in a vacuum. That at what point do you say it goes back to the parents? Because in the example Leonetta gave, those parents didn't have the skills to raise healthy children. What about their parents? What about their parents? Where does the overall society have a role and a responsibility to provide for every family, provide mental health, provide healthcare, provide enough money for food and housing and clothing for school, all the things that make it life feel more secure and less like everything's going to fall apart. And if you don't do something criminal and rob from somebody else, you're not going to have anything. I want to say that going to jail for, let's say, murder is not a deterrent to murder. I, back in college, did a speech in speech class about criminal justice. And back then it was known that most crimes are crimes of passion. They are not premeditated. Nobody was, sitting outside somebody's house, checking on their schedule. It happened in the heat of the moment, which goes back to do all these people need guns that they can use to kill people in the heat of the moment? So, the idea that people are going to be imprisoned and never do a crime again is or deter other people from doing it is, I'm not sure these cops or these white guys who killed Ahmaud Arbery, I'm not sure other white people or other cops have really learned the lesson from those situations. And I think it is really, it's a hard time in this country. And I think we need to make some positive changes of how we treat other people and how we look at other people, or our decline is going to continue. So having said all that, I try to be hopeful and optimistic. I think we need more social workers like Lynetta out in the world, so she could spend more time with this family that needs so much attention. With that, I thank everybody for coming. I'll stop the recording. I'm wishing everybody, wherever you are, happy and safe Mardi Gras, and then we'll do announcements.